Ready to dive into some serious science? Today we're taking a closer look at the GLP-1 receptor. The one that's been getting a lot of attention lately. And for good reason. But we're going beyond the headlines today. We're going deep, deep into the research to understand what this little molecule is really all about. Because trust me, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So let's start with the obvious: weight loss. That's what everyone's talking about, right? Activate the GLP-1 receptor and boom, the pounds melt away. Seems simple enough, but as with most things in biology, it's way more complicated. This is where things get really fascinating. A team of researchers led by Fenian did this really cool study where they engineered mice. Now, these weren't just any mice. These mice were missing GLP-1 receptors specifically in their central nervous system. So we're talking brain and spinal cord. Basically, they cut off communication between the GLP-1 receptor and the control center of the body. Then they gave these mice a GLP-1 agonist. You can think of an agonist like a key that turns on a specific receptor. So they're activating the GLP-1 receptor in these mice. Now, if the whole activate receptor lose weight thing were true, these mice should have stayed the same weight, maybe even gained some. Because even though they're getting the signal to eat less, their bodies aren't actually burning any extra fat. But here's the kicker. The mice did eat less, just like the mice with normal receptors, but they didn't lose any weight. It was like their bodies were holding on to the energy for dear life. Like they were saying, nope, we're not letting go of this precious fuel. Even brains are telling us we're full. This totally challenged the simple calories in, calories out model we've all heard so much about. Yeah, it suggested that where the GLP-1 receptor is activated matters, like a lot. Imagine a light switch that controls different lights depending on where you flip it. Up might turn on the kitchen light, but down, even though it's the same switch, turns on the living room light. It's the same idea with the GLP-1 receptor. Activating it in the brain might control your appetite, but activating it somewhere else might be what triggers your body to actually break down fat. So it's not just about activating the receptor, it's about activating it in the right place. And this idea of location being key was further solidified by another study. This one was led by Sisley. They took this location specificity thing to a whole new level. They used a GLP-1 agonist called Lawtide, which is actually used for weight loss in humans. But instead of giving it to regular mice, they used mice that were missing GLP-1 receptors in very specific areas. We're talking about hypothalamus, which is like the control center for hunger and metabolism. The brainstem, which controls things like breathing and heart rate. The pancreas, which is responsible for producing insulin. And the nodose ganglia, which are these clusters of nerves that send signals from the gut to the brain. They really honed in on those specific locations. What they found was pretty amazing. Even though the mice ate less in the short term, just like in the previous study, they didn't experience any significant weight loss. And get this, they didn't develop any aversion to the taste of Lawtide. You know how when something makes you sick, you start to avoid it? Yeah, that didn't happen with these mice, which suggests that the GLP-1 receptors involved in taste aversion are not the same ones that are being activated by Lawtide. So not only does the general location matter, but the specific address within that location seems to be super important too. It's not just about hitting the target, it's about hitting the bullseye. And it seems like there are multiple bullseyes when it comes to the GLP-1 receptor. And it gets even weirder. The timing of when the GLP-1 receptor is activated seems to play a role too. Some studies have shown that activating GLP-1 at certain times of day, like right after a meal, might be more effective for weight loss than other times. It's like the receptor is only listening for the right signal at the right time. And only then does it trigger the response we're looking for. But hold on tight, because we're just getting started. The GLP-1 receptor isn't just about weight loss. It's also involved in something even more fundamental: regulating blood sugar levels, or as it's more formally known, glucose control. And you guessed it, there's a lot more to uncover here too. For years, the classic explanation was pretty straightforward. GLP-1 receptors in the pancreas, specifically the ones on those insulin-producing beta cells. Those are the stars of the show. GLP-1 would tell the beta cells to release insulin. Insulin would help cells absorb glucose from the bloodstream, and ta-da! Balance blood sugar. But a team of researchers led by Smith decided to put that assumption to the test. They created mice that were missing GLP-1 receptors specifically in their pancreatic beta cells. So imagine taking away the very cells that are supposed to be responding to GLP-1 signal to release insulin. You'd think these mice would have blood sugar levels all over the place, right? But here's the shocker. Their blood sugar control was perfectly normal. They could handle sugar intake just fine. And their insulin secretion was right on target. It was like their bodies had found a workaround, a way to regulate blood sugar even without the usual suspects. This finding was a total game changer. It told us that GLP-1's role in blood sugar control is way more complex than we thought. There had to be some other mechanism at play, some hidden pathway stepping in to keep those glucose levels in check. And it gets even more intriguing when you look at the different ways GLP-1 can be delivered into the body. When researchers gave GLP-1 directly into the abdominal cavity of mice, it lowered their blood sugar without even increasing their insulin levels, like it was bypassing the usual insulin pathway completely. But here's the real head scratcher. When they gave GLP-1 intravenously, straight into the bloodstream, it had absolutely no effect on blood sugar. It was like the GLP-1 message got lost in translation, unable to find its intended recipient. This really highlights the importance of location and context when it comes to GLP-1's function. The same molecule, delivered differently, can lead to completely different outcomes. It's like sending a letter to the right address, but in the wrong format. It might never reach the person you're trying to contact. We've explored how location and timing matter when it comes to the GLP-1 receptor, and how it's involved in both weight loss and blood sugar control. But buckle up, because we're about to take another turn, this time into the world of heart health. And you can bet there are some more surprises waiting for us there. So you might be thinking, what happens if you just get rid of the GLP-1 receptor altogether? Like, completely remove it from the equation. Researchers actually did that. They created mice that lacked the GLP-1 receptor entirely. Now you'd think those mice would be in pretty bad shape, maybe develop severe diabetes, or have some serious heart problems. But guess what? They were actually relatively healthy. They didn't develop those really debilitating conditions you might expect, given how important this receptor seems to be. So how is that possible? How can these mice function pretty much normally without this receptor? Well, it points to something pretty amazing about biology. Redundancy. Think of it like a flashlight with multiple batteries. If one battery dies, the flashlight still works, because there are others there to pick up the slack. Our bodies are kind of like that. They often have backup systems, alternate pathways, ways to achieve the same goal even if one part is missing. So even without the GLP-1 receptor, other mechanisms might be stepping in to compensate, making sure those essential functions keep running smoothly. This built-in redundancy is really a testament to the power of evolution. Over millions of years, our bodies have evolved to be incredibly resilient, able to adapt all sorts of challenges, keep us going. It's like having a backup generator for your house. If the main power goes out, you're not left in the dark. Now, this doesn't mean the GLP-1 receptor isn't important. Clearly, it plays a big role, as we've seen. But it does highlight this remarkable adaptability of living organisms. And this is where things get really exciting. What if we could understand these backup systems, these alternative pathways even better? Could we harness them to develop new therapies? Instead of just targeting one specific receptor, maybe we could tap into the body's own natural healing and regulatory powers, enhancing its ability to adapt and thrive. It's like shifting from a fix-it approach to a boost-it approach. Instead of just trying to repair what's broken, we're empowering the body to heal itself. The more holistic way of thinking about things, recognizing that everything in the body is interconnected. Right, ready for another layer of complexity. Because now we're diving into the world of GLP-1 subtypes. It turned out there isn't just one uniform GLP-1 receptor. Hanging out in all these different organs and tissues, there are actually subtle variations, subtypes of the receptor, each with its own quirks and preferences. And these different subtypes are often found in different parts of the body, even within different cell types of the same organ. It's like having a set of keys, but each key is slightly different, designed to unlock a specific lock. You wouldn't use your car key to try to open your front door. Each GLP-1 subtype is kind of like that, specialized for a particular job in a particular location. This discovery of GLP-1 subtypes is like opening up a whole new toolbox for developing targeted therapies. Imagine designing drugs that act like those specialized keys, unlocking only the specific doors we want to open, without affecting other parts of the body. It's like precision medicine taken to the next level, tailored treatments for individual needs. And the potential applications go way beyond what we've talked about already. Weight loss, blood sugar control, heart health. Researchers are exploring the role of GLP-1 in things like neurodegenerative disorders, gut health, even certain types of cancer. It's like this one receptor is involved in so many different aspects of our health, and we're only beginning to scratch the surface of its influence. But before we get too carried away, let's bring it back to you, the listener. You're probably wondering, how does all this scientific research, all these discoveries about mice and receptors and subtypes actually translate to my life, to my health? Well, first and foremost, it reminds us that complexity is the norm when it comes to biology. Our bodies are incredibly intricate, with layers upon layers of interconnected systems and pathways. There's rarely a simple on-off switch, a one-size-fits-all solution. And this knowledge should empower us to be more informed and proactive about our health. It encourages us to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to seek out treatments that are truly tailored to our individual needs. It's not just about the science itself. It's about how that science translates into a deeper understanding of ourselves and our well-being. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. And I know it can feel a bit overwhelming, all these studies, all these details about receptors and pathways, but the good news is you don't need to memorize all of it. What really matters is understanding the big picture, those key takeaways that you can actually use to take control of your own health. So let's zoom out for a second, try to make sense of all this complexity. We started by talking about weight loss and how activating the GLP-1 receptor seemed like the magic bullet. But we learned pretty quickly that it's not that simple. Where that receptor is activated makes all the difference. It's like having a key that fits multiple locks, but only opens certain doors. Remember those mice we talked about, the ones missing the GLP-1 receptors in their central nervous systems? They ate less when given a GLP-1 agonist, but they didn't lose any weight. That was the big clue. It told us that activating the receptor in the brain, which might control your appetite, isn't the same as activating it in, say, fat cells, where it could trigger fat breakdown. Then we moved on to blood sugar control, and again, we ran into some surprises. For years, the textbook answer was that GLP-1 receptors in the pancreas were the key players, specifically the ones on those insulin-producing beta cells. But then we saw those mice missing the receptors in their beta cells, and their blood sugar was perfectly normal. That's because our bodies are incredibly adaptable. There are backup systems ready to go if one pathway gets disrupted. And don't forget how the way we deliver GLP-1 can completely change the outcome. Injected directly into the abdomen, it lowers blood sugar without needing insulin, but injected into the bloodstream, no effect whatsoever. Location, location, location. It's all about context. And then we talked about those mice that were missing the GLP-1 receptor completely. And you know what? They were actually pretty healthy. It's a reminder that our bodies have this incredible redundancy built in, like having multiple routes to get to the same destination. If one road is blocked, there's usually another way around. And finally, we uncovered the world of GLP-1 subtypes. It's not just one generic receptor, there are actually subtle variations, each one fine-tuned for a specific job in the specific location. And that opens up a whole new frontier for developing targeted therapies, treatments that are tailored to each person's unique needs. So what does all this mean for you? It means your body isn't a simple machine. It's a dynamic, adaptive system with an amazing ability to regulate itself. And the more we learn about how it all works, the better equipped we are to make good decisions about our health. This deep dive wasn't just about the GLP-1 receptor. It was about embracing the complexity of biology, about challenging what we think we know, and about the power of science to help us understand our own bodies. So keep that curiosity going, keep asking questions, keep learning, because there's always more to discover. And who knows what amazing breakthroughs are just around the corner.